The George Floyd riots will go down in history as some of the worst riots we have ever seen in this country. It swept across the nation. And it was so bad that we're now learning in leaked text messages from Mayor Lori Lightfoot of Chicago. She said, quote, "The city is up for grabs." Someone had asked her. Scared young black people were worried about where to go and what to do because the city was being ransacked, or at least certain parts of it. And Lori Lightfoot said, head north, then go west. The city is up for grabs. Others complained the police weren't doing anything. I remember back when all this was going down, there was a local alderman. If you're not familiar with what an alderman is, some people aren't. Chicago has basically like neighborhood elected politicians. And so there's this guy, he's saying, you lower the bridges, or I can't remember if I think they lowered the bridge. Oh, no, I'm sorry. They raised the bridges, blocking all of these extremists and rioters out and into the neighborhoods. Or it may have been they lowered the bridge. I can't remember which way it was. But I guess the city was trying to protect downtown and the financial district and areas like that in Chicago. And so they were basically just like, get everybody into the neighborhoods where people live. And this freaked them out. But we got more news, too. I want to go through the story from the Daily Wire about Mayor Lori Lightfoot saying the city's up for grabs, but we got some interesting information. Andy No reporting for Newsweek. Prosecutors make first move to break up Antifa cell as 11 activists charged with violence. I love the smears against Andy No. They're like, he's far right and he's not a journalist. And I'm like, dude writes for Newsweek. Spare me your stupid, whiny baby propaganda. This is not an opinion piece. It is a news article for Newsweek. Newsweek is not a right-wing publication. You can actually see even Dave Rubin provides opinion pieces. But let's take a look at what's going on with Lori Lightfoot. Daily Mail reports the text that Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who has been harshly criticized for her leadership as her city descends into further chaos, sent over more than 2.5 years with city aldermen have been revealed. And in one text during the riots after the death of George Floyd, she bluntly stated the city is up for grabs. A new report from the Chicago Tribune details text messages Lightfoot had sent over more than 2.5 years. The Tribune obtained more than 2.5 years of Lightfoot's text messages with aldermen through a series of Freedom of Information Act requests, which her staff failed to comply with until the state attorney general admonished them and the Tribune threatened a lawsuit. The Tribune stated that on March 31st, 2020, Alderman Pat Dowell complained that police weren't doing a damn thing. And in fact, were letting these folks loot in her ward. The police have to engage these lawless Fs. Woof, Dowell added. Alderman Rosana Rodriguez Sanchez informed Lightfoot that there were people downtown that were not looting, asking Lightfoot if the Chicago Transit Authority could start again so they could leave. Lightfoot responded that those people could go west to catch the blue line or go to the brown line north. The Tribune continues, quote, after Rodriguez Sanchez said she was getting messages from scared young black people who don't know where to go, Lightfoot responded, go west and then north, Rosanna. The city is up for grabs. Woo! The police stood down, let everyone loot. The mayor knew about it. And when good people were suffering, she said, well, go west and north. The city is up for grabs. Amazing leadership. And you expect me to get behind these police departments? Look, I don't blame a lot of them for backing off within reason. And I'm not going to blame them now when, especially during the riots, I was like, this is what people vote for. It's what they get. But it's not so much that police were standing down as it is that in many circumstances, police have outright refused to help people even when they've had good reason to actually help them. But it's tough. It is. Last July, University of Chicago student Audrey Unverfurth, whose classmate Max Lewis was killed as he was commuting home on the city's subway system, ripped Lightfoot for claiming crime was declining after a violent weekend that saw more than 100 people shot and at least 18 killed. Lewis, 20, was commuting on the city's Green Line during rush hour on July 1st from his internship at an investment firm in downtown Chicago. The Sun-Times reported. While sitting inside the train, a bullet pierced the window and struck the back of his neck at the 51st Street Washington Park station, Fox News reported. After Lightfoot insisted that crime was on the decline, Unverfurth slammed her on Fox News, saying Lori Lightfoot had the nerve recently to say that crime in Chicago is on the decline. That's a blatant lie. I don't have confidence in Lightfoot anymore. And you did? And this is what I was saying, right? I'm torn between being upset that police aren't protecting the good people and they're not, and the DAs aren't prosecuting the bad people, and also being like, well, the police were demonized by people who voted for this and supported Lori Lightfoot. So that's why people say I'm a fence sitter or whatever, but no, I think I have just a rather moderate position. People want me to jump on one side or the other overtly, abolish the police or back the blue. And I'm like, it's not so simple. There are a lot of bad cops, and Chicago is one of the worst examples of a police department. The city is just absolutely corrupt. And if I had to bet, I'd say 80% of the cops in Chicago were dirty. I know there's probably some Chicago cops who are watching right now. They watch my show. Then I must not be talking about you. But I'll tell you this. A lot of Chicago cops are dirty. And I don't mean that 80% of cops in Chicago are in on the take or anything like that, although I wouldn't be surprised if a majority was. I'm just saying that a good majority, around 80%, are not there to protect you. They're to uphold the system. The same is true for the NYPD and the LAPD. There are good cops. Because I know people who became cops. And their idea was like, it seems like a good job to try and protect my neighbor because someone's got to do it. Especially growing up on the South Side where you have crime, and then people in the neighborhood, like if I become a cop, I can protect my friends. The problem is a lot of cops become jaded by the system. And then eventually they learn, you know what? It's me or them, and I choose me. And then what happens is you get bad cops. Now, I'll say that and also add, someone tried mugging me in Chicago. I've told the story before. And several cops actually saved me from a crime in progress. For that, I commend these officers who did. And I'll also add that I've had Chicago cops give me bunk tickets and try to ruin and destroy my life because they don't care at all. They don't care about what they do to people. They don't care about how they destroy lives. Michael Malice made a great point when he was on the Timcast IRL podcast saying that he was on hypothetically, a story he's, sort of fabricating. He was on a grand jury. And I think it's like he's changing the details of the story because it really happened. And he told these people that they were trying to return an indictment on a drug charge. And he said, do you really want to ruin this kid's life forever over this charge and indict him on this? And he convinced everyone to say no. And then the prosecutor was shocked to come back and find that they were not returning an indictment when they had evidence this person had committed some kind of drug violation. I agree with Michael in that capacity. Look, there are a lot of bad people, and if a cop can stop a crime in progress or stop rioting, that's what we need. If people are going around burning down buildings and smashing things, that's when we need cops to prove their worth. The problem, however, is that the people in this city voted for all of this. They vote for Lori Lightfoot. You get what you vote for. So am I going to blame the cops when they're like just doing what the people want? No, I'm just going to leave. Well, I can say there's at least one good thing coming as of recent. Andy No reports prosecutors make first move to break up Antifa cell. 11 activists charged with violence. All right, let's see if I can get this to... There we go. For the first time in the U.S., prosecutors are attempting to break up a network of alleged violent Antifa cells. This week, the San Diego County District Attorney Office charged 11 alleged Antifa members with felony conspiracy and felony assault charges, among other crimes, in a riot case where supporters of former President Donald Trump and random bystanders were beaten in Pacific Beach, California in January. 8 suspects were arraigned this week. They have all pleaded not guilty, of course. 8 suspects were issued search and arrest warrants last week in San Diego County and Los Angeles County. Police recovered 3 guns, ammunition, body armor, and drugs. The large operation to arrest the suspects involved mutual support from multiple law enforcement agencies in LA, Long Beach, and Escondido. The case is sending shockwaves through the far left networks in Southern California who have been raising funds for their comrades. He then goes on to list the names and ages, but in interest of time, I'll move on. Quote, the defendants are alleged to be affiliated with Antifa and are organized into 2 groups, one originating from Los Angeles and the other from San Diego. Reads the charging document. Antifa is known to use force, fear, and violence to further their own interests and to suppress the interests of others. This tactic is referred to as direct action and is known to mean acts of violence such as assault, battery, assault with deadly weapons, arson, and vandalism. The alleged object of this conspiracy was to incite and participate in a riot using direct action tactics. On January 9th, around 100 Trump supporters gathered on the Pacific Beach Pier in San Diego to protest Trump's election loss. They were met with an equally sized group of masked people dressed in black uniforms and riot gear. They carried shields, banners, and signs displaying the Antifa logo. The complaints, allegations of assault causing bodily injuries by the suspects match what was captured on video at the time. Videos show bat-carrying Antifa members chasing fleeing participants of the Trump rally and pepper spraying them in the face before punching and kicking them. Bystanders on the beach were also victimized. One video captured a man walking his dog on the boardwalk being assaulted with pepper spray from a person in black next to an Antifa flag. Jeremy White was charged with animal cruelty over the incident. Police eventually declared an unlawful assembly after officers were hit with rocks, bottles, and pepper spray by the rioters. San Diego police said in a statement last week, 16 people were victimized in 8 separate attacks at the riot. The San Diego DA's office released a press statement saying that the Antifa rioters also targeted minors and a journalist. Quote, the Antifa-affiliated group surrounded several minors who they believed to be attending the Patriot March, sprayed them with mace and chased them up the boardwalk, shoving one of the minors to the ground. The minor was surrounded and beaten, resulting in the minor victim being taken to the hospital to be treated for a concussion. John Kokoza, a 43-year-old local photographer who was there to cover the protest, says he was assaulted multiple times at the riot by people from the Antifa side. Police were standing 40 feet away and did nothing, Kokoza says. He suffered deep bruising on his back after a rioter from the Antifa side hit him with a long wooden stick. That guy was aiming for my head. I saw him coming and I turned at the last moment. According to the criminal complaint, Antifa supporters had posted on social media calling for a counter direct action against the Trump rally days before. During the riots in 2020 and 2021 in West Coast cities like Portland, Seattle, and LA, violent direct actions by Antifa and leftist groups were announced and promoted on Twitter. The complaint alleges that 9 out of the 10 suspects wore black clothing, with the 10th suspect wearing black and a red flannel jacket that had pro-Antifa patches. Black clothing and black masks are part of a tactic known as a black bloc and is used by Antifa groups to evade identification by journalists and law enforcement. The complaint details how the suspects worked in a coordinated fashion to blind victims with pepper spray before striking them with potentially deadly weapons, punches, kicks, and projectiles. Eric Yak of San Marcos, California, is charged with felony conspiracy, felony assault by means likely to produce great bodily injury, assault with a deadly weapon, assault with a stun gun or less lethal weapon, and multiple felonious use of tear gas charges. He is currently wanted on an arrest warrant, and his bail will be set at $250,000. Samuel Ogden, charged with felony conspiracy and assault, is from Touche, Washington. His social media is filled with posts about stopping fascism, and one of the groups he likes on Facebook is Antifa International. Alexander Ackridge Jacobs was arraigned on Thursday and is charged with felony conspiracy and 2 counts of assault with a deadly weapon. I mean, it goes on. He lists all of these people, and I think we get it. This has been a long time coming. At least it's happening. It's what I can say. The very least, at least it's happening. These people have long engaged in terrorism. And you know what's funny? I didn't realize this until I was reading about the definition of the word terrorism and its etymology. The root of terrorism comes from the French Revolution, the Great Terror, staged by the Jacobins, the far left in France, who were going around beating and executing people to force them into submission to get their political way. The Great Terror. Not the kind of way, I think we should live. I'm more about like enlightenment and liberty, freedom, anti-authoritarianism. It's amazing. There's an op-ed in NBC that says Ron DeSantis is embracing, policies conducive to authoritarianism, such as resisting COVID vaccine mandates. That's right. Now it is being stated by the machine that telling people they're free to live their own lives is authoritarian. These people are evil, and it's a combination of overt and the banality of evil. When evil becomes commonplace is when you see the rise of the banality of evil. When Nazis just carry out their orders without thinking twice or caring about what they're doing. That's the banality of evil. It's just commonplace. It's happening all over. And that's what Antifa had become for some time. So I hope you pathetic cowards, you psychotic terrorists are terrified. So I mentioned this in the previous segment. Shout out to Siraj Hashmi. He has the list of people who should have their phones taken away. And I tweeted, I put on Twitter, my politics are as follows. The government sucks, mostly. Because I'm not an anarchist, but the government does mostly suck. And the reason I say mostly is there's still some good things that come out of government. And it wasn't specifically like our particular government now, like Congress. Siraj, I believe jokingly, threatened to put me on the list. Siraj. No, but I love the list. It's funny. He didn't. I didn't get on it for that. But I think it's not an absurd statement. It's just, funny to make the joke. To threaten me that it's like a wrong statement because we all definitely believe, for the most part, the government is trash. I mean, I'm just ragging on cops not protecting the city and Mayor Lori Lightfoot saying the city's up for grabs. But every so often you get a win. Every so often you'll get police actually doing something. And so on the whole level, what we've seen with the lockdowns, that's really put me in the negative camp for police, where I've been like, abolish them, fine. Because if these cops think that I'm going to sit by while they destroy the lives of people who simply want to, I don't know, open a cafe. And look, we got this. I got this right here. Look at this. Albert Lee restaurant owner found guilty of violating state COVID mandate. And we'll elaborate in another segment. But you got police who arrested a woman because she opened a cafe. Is that what it is? A restaurant owner? And you think that I'm going to come out and be like, back to blue, baby? I'm going to be like, no, there's too many stories like this. There's too many stories of the police standing down and letting riders do whatever they want. There's too many stories of bad cops getting away with it. And it doesn't mean that every good cop should be, punished. It just means that at a certain point, when you have police brutality and you have video after video after video of all of this stuff, I can still say that out of 375 million police interactions, there's bad things that happen. But we have to tolerate a margin of error, and we hold them to account to the best of our abilities. Now, a lot of people are saying like Kim Potter should be in prison. She's the woman who thought she was pulling a taser but shot Dante Wright. But she was entitled to self-defense because the dude was wanted on a felony weapons charge and dove into his vehicle and was potentially grabbing something. I wish it didn't happen. And it's one of those things where you're like, man, how do you know? But the cop has an obligation to die. And so it's tough. It's not easy to figure out how we solve these problems. But look, when I see those stories and I can say, I think we need police. I think police typically do a good job acting as some kind of arbiter between conflict can be a good thing. The problem then is when I say, yes, we want to get rid of the bad cops. Yes, cops should be held accountable. All of that stuff I agree with, but don't abolish the police. And then what happens? Cops start going around arresting small business owners and middle-class workers and threatening them and laughing about it. And I'm just like, all right, at this point, wash it all out. Get rid of all of it. If the police won't come out, and some have, but if overwhelmingly they just keep on playing this dirty game, then I'm not going to defend an institution that refuses to defend constitutional rights. And there's some things to be said about, gun rights and things like that. I believe that police across the country should refuse to enforce gun laws. I believe they should refuse to enforce gun laws. I don't think people should be breaking the law. And there's challenges when the law is violating our Constitution, but we have a court remedy process for this. And that means people who have been charged with gun crimes, you got to take it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court needs to issue rulings on this. There should be some rulings coming up next year, which would be very fascinating. But the police who are gleefully arresting people for exercising their constitutional rights, now you're crossing a line. Look, the Second Amendment doesn't say the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed unless there are limits, though. There are limits. And the limits are when you overtly violate someone's rights. So the First Amendment, the right to religion, the right to speech, freedom of the press, redress of grievances, and I'm missing one, aren't I? Whatever. You get the point. Let's say you have the freedom of speech. And then you decide you're going to articulate and advocate for extreme violence, directing people on what to do and how to do it. Well, that's the threshold for us. There's some questions as to whether or not the words themselves should be crimes, but we've all kind of agreed like, you're directing people to attack and you're organizing and leading an effort. Let's take a look at the Second Amendment. Clearly, if you brandish a gun at someone without legal without any, not in self-defense, just as a threat, that's the same line. You are issuing a direct threat against someone, putting someone at fear for their life. Yeah, I believe that should also be a crime. Now, if someone is threatening you and you raise your weapon, well, there you go, defense. Let's say you want to keep a fully automatic suppressed rifle of sorts. Where in the Second Amendment does it say the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed except when new technology emerges that no. They knew about new technology. They knew about new weapons. They knew about the emergence of new weapons. They'd seen it. They'd seen the development of new guns in their time. They knew this. So to come out and be like, we've arbitrarily decided some arms you can't have, no, that's wrong. Completely wrong. So I ask, where are the good cops who are going to be like, I'm not playing that game? You will not be arrested for bearing arms. I've seen these videos. There's a video of a black dude walking down the street with a rifle. He gets surrounded by cops and they all draw their guns and tell him to get on the ground. And I'm like, the hell do these cops think they are? Stopping a law-abiding citizen who's legally, lawfully carrying a weapon and then force him to the ground. There's other videos where white dudes do the same thing. And the cops walk up and stop them and say, I just want to check to make sure the weapon is not fully automatic. And then they say, okay. And the cop says, thanks for what you're doing. We appreciate it. You should come to our meetings. We could really use your support. And that is still bad. Now, I do believe that racism will play a role in a lot of these things. I don't necessarily want to say that two separate incidences, which are unique incidents, are indicative of overt racism. But I certainly think racism does play a role in some of them. But the idea that the police would stop and inspect anyone's weapon is still a violation of the Second Amendment, in my opinion. And I believe that, these guys get stopped, they should sue and say on what legal grounds did they have the right to stop, detain me, and inspect a weapon I am legally allowed to carry. Now, I guess to be reasonable, police do have a right to stop someone and ask them questions for a temporary period if there's probable cause. But I do not believe that holding a gun is should grant you probable cause. And that being said, I don't know where we go from here. I know people in cities will keep voting for these politicians, and the cops are going to say, you get what you deserve. You get what you vote for. And I can't disagree with them. All I can really say is, look, I moved out of those places. I don't like how the institutions are run with the police, and I can't blame the police for giving the people what they want. In which case, I'm out. Look at New York. They complain about police brutality, but they vote for the same people over and over and over again. You get what you vote for. It's good to see law enforcement going after Antifa, though. We'll see how that plays out. Excellent reporting from Andy No. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all then.